Hi, and welcome to the Don't Screen Us Out press conference in response to the Severe Fetal Impairment abortion bill that has been introduced to the Northern Ireland Assembly today by Mr Paul Givan, MLA. The bill is supported by Don't Screen Us Out campaign. There will be a number of people speaking this afternoon to provide as much information as we can about the bill and share stories of people either living with Down syndrome or those who have a child with a disability, and will also have a medical perspective. If you wish to ask any of our panel questions, please do so in the comments section of the YouTube link, and we will do our best to ask the questions at the end. Firstly, a bit about the Don't Screen Us Out campaign. It is a group of over 1,000 people with Down syndrome and their families who seek to introduce reforms which reduce discrimination towards people with Down syndrome, along with increasing support for people with the condition and their families. A comment from them from the bill says this: the new abortion law in Northern Ireland allows for abortion up to birth for those pregnancies where the baby is found to have a non-fatal disability. This discriminates against babies found by screening programmes to have conditions such as Down syndrome at a time when we consider ourselves to be an inclusive and a diverse society. In 2019, when the new law was proposed, 2,000 people with Down syndrome and their families called for proposals to stop short of introducing abortions up to birth for Down syndrome. We understand Heidi Crowter and other self-advocates when they say that they find the differentiation in law deeply offensive. The campaign therefore welcomes the introduction of Paul Givan's bill to the Northern Ireland Assembly today as a progressive move to tackle a clear discrimination in abortion law. Now I wish to introduce you to Mr Paul Givan, MLA, who will now provide us with information about the bill. Paul.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I'm just going to check that my quality is coming through okay. Okay, well, I'll proceed. In terms of the, yeah, okay, I think we're okay. Can I just get a thumbs up to make sure that the quality there, because I wasn't getting a lot of good quality just at that introduction.
Yes, you're okay, Paul.
Hi, okay. Hopefully that's the internet quality back up and running again, so apologies for that. Great, thank you. So the bill was introduced this morning on the floor of the Assembly, and that now constitutes the first stage of the bill, and that will
Okay, it seems like we've lost Paul. We'll try and get him back. We'll get Paul in after to discuss the bill after this. So I now want to introduce Heidi Crowter, a disability rights campaigner. Heidi attended mainstream schools and hairdressing college where she obtained GCSE, BTECs and MVQs. She currently works in a hair salon. She's married to James Carter and they live in their own flat together. Heidi is a Down syndrome advocate who is now a seasoned interviewee on local and national media, a strong spokeswoman for Down syndrome who has been quoted in both the Northern Irish Assembly, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. She is currently engaged in a case due to be heard in the coming months in the High Court, challenging abortion up to birth for Down syndrome, as she believes this is a downright discrimination. Heidi will now share her reaction to the bill. Heidi.
Last year, the Northern Ireland Assembly and the Northern Irish people voted against abortion up to birth for non-fatal disabilities. I took a petition to number 10 with 18,000 signatures on it, but as Northern Ireland is not an independent country, their laws have to be approved by Westminster. Sadly, Westminster didn't listen to Northern Ireland, and the vote was ignored. This current law makes me feel that my life is not as valuable as anyone else's, and also it upsets me that no one wants a baby like me, except my mother.
Thank you, Heidi. That's really great.
That- It also makes me feel that people don't listen to my views about this topic. I support Paul's bill as it protects human rights and all the things that I believe in. And he's doing the same thing as I'm doing in England. I have lots of weapons for him, as we are both trying to change the world. And I will support every success in changing the law. Good luck, Paul.
Thank you, Heidi. We really appreciate you sharing your story. Thank you.
Okay.
Now we're going to hear from a woman called Laura Denny from Belfast, mother of two. One of Laura's sons, Nathan, was born with Down syndrome and he's 2.5, and she wishes to share a bit of her story and her support for the bill. Laura.
Living with a child with Down syndrome. So living with a child with Down syndrome is no different to living with a child who does not have Down syndrome. Throughout my pregnancy with Nathan, I had completely consumed myself with preparing for life with Down syndrome, so much so that I completely forgot to prepare myself for the reality of having a baby. I did not know how to use a sterilizer or make up bottles, but I could tell you exactly how many roads that my son would need to cross to get to the nearest shop or school. And I threw myself into learning Makaton so that I would be able to communicate with my son should he be born deaf or non-verbal. When I got him home from the hospital, I very quickly realised that he needed fed, bathed and cuddled just like any other child. Our life at home with Nathan looks like your typical life at home with any 2-year-old. It's loud, messy, chaotic and filled with lots of laughter and tantrums. Nathan has the warmest character that I've ever encountered in a child. So many people, both from older and younger generations, will just gravitate towards him. It can be hard to get around Tesco's when doing the weekly shop, as everyone just wants to talk to him, or when they see him, they want to talk to me about someone they know who has Down syndrome and share their experiences. Nathan will welcome all the attention and say hiya to anyone who's willing to listen to him. Pre-COVID, Nathan had the most active social life. On Mondays, he would attend sing and sign classes. Tuesdays, he would have swimming lessons. On Wednesdays, he would attend the MenCap parent and toddler group. On Thursdays, luckily, it was a lazy house day. And finally, on Fridays, we would attend our local parish playgroup. We are incredibly lucky to be part of our local Down syndrome support group, who always have activities planned for Nathan and the family. Every weekend, we would be involved in music therapy classes or outings to parks and soft play. As well as being mummy to Nathan and his brother Lorcan, I'm also employed as airline cabin crew, and my husband is an analytical chemist. Many people are of the belief that you must come out of employment in order to care for your child with Down syndrome, but the truth of the matter is that we need to go to work in order to provide for our children in the same way that any family does. So we balance our social and our work lives in order to meet the needs of our kids and provide for our family. Yes, Nathan's diagnosis will bring with it a lot of hospital appointments and regular therapies. At the beginning, it was very difficult to wrap my head around all the hospital letters and medical jargon, but Nathan taught me how to take this in my stride. The hospital appointments gradually ease as he gets older, and other than routine appointments, Nathan does not have any further medical conditions. He has totally surpassed the expectations of the medical professionals. I was told that he would struggle to walk, talk, feed, and that academically he would be extremely delayed. Nathan began walking shortly after his 2nd birthday. Not only has he got a good range of vocabulary, but he can also incorporate this with Makaton sign language. And as a baby, Nathan was breastfed before moving on to bottle feeds and weaned at 6 months, and he will happily eat 3 meals a day with snacks in between. Nathan has brought us closer together as a family as we all feed off his approach to life. He has come into this world with such strength and determination, nothing gets in his way. I recently took him for a blood test and I watched him in awe as he sang Twinkle Twinkle Little Star while the nurses were injecting him. Most adults wouldn't be able to show such bravery, and here is this 2-year-old putting us all to shame. We could all stand to be a bit more like Nathan. When I received his diagnosis, I told my friends and family from the get-go, and when they heard the news, they always thought they knew the right things to say. Many people told me that my son would only know love and happiness and that he would never feel sadness or anger. This worried me, and you might find that bizarre, but I wanted my son to be able to feel and process the same emotions as any child. I remember saying to my own mum that I wanted him to have a temper someday and have tantrums, and she told me that I would rue the day. Well, here I am ruining the day, because believe me, Nathan's tantrums can rival that of the Tasmanian devil. On the 21st of March last year, the year before, and again this year, we will be lighting up Belfast City Hall blue and yellow for support of World Down Syndrome Day and to show that we stand with those who have Down syndrome. How can we display this amazing public support and in the same breath allow a law that suggests a person with Down syndrome does not have the right to life? This is one of the most ignorant and hypocritical movements to come out of Northern Ireland. Is this public display of support just a popularity movement because we think it's what the rest of the world wants to see? Or are we going to give this idea of support some substance and merit and allow people with Down syndrome the right to life and to be respected, valued members of our community? The current law would suggest that Down syndrome is a severe fetal abnormality and that a person born with Down syndrome would have no quality of life. Let me ask this. If my typical son were in a car crash tomorrow and lost both his legs, would I be offered to euthanize him because his quality of life now would appear bleak to those who do not know him? Who do we trust with the definition of good quality of life? Had I myself based my decision on the information given to me by the senior consultants of the Royal Victoria Hospital, I would not be talking to you about my son today. I was given a 0% chance of survival for my son and told that I would miscarry and that I should consider exploring my options across the water. Had I have made the decision to end his life because he had Down syndrome, I would never have heard him say "Mummy," witness him taking his first steps or going to school and making the most valuable peers and enriching the lives of everyone he meets. I stand by my decision to protect my son's life. He's the most amazing little person before his diagnosis. If you ever meet my son, I can guarantee that Down syndrome will be the last thing that you notice about him. You will be met with the most beautiful blue eyes and drawn into his funny little personality with the most infectious laugh that you'll ever hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. We're still struggling with getting Paul back, so we're just going to go straight to Dr. Callum Miller next. A bit of an introduction to Callum before we bring him in. And as I said, we are having issues. Dr. Callum Miller is a medical doctor and research associate of the University of Oxford, specialising in human rights and medical ethics. He has published a wide variety of topics in top academic journals and received prizes from the University of Oxford and the Royal College of Psychiatrists for his work on medical ethics. He's spoken at conferences and universities all over the world on these topics. So I'm just going to pass over to Dr. Callum Miller for his say on the abortion bill.
Thank you, and I can confirm that to have someone singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star while taking blood from them is a very rare thing indeed, and I have no doubt that on those grounds alone, wee Nathan is all the doctor's favourite. As a doctor, I have a duty to treat all my patients as equals, with the dignity and respect belonging to them as human beings, no matter what their circumstances are, no matter their background, their age, their gender, their race, or their ability. Because at the core of medicine is respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. Unfortunately, the law in Great Britain doesn't allow me to see my patients as equals, and I fear that Northern Ireland, a place that human beings with disabilities can call home, is being forced to give up that precious title and to make the same mistakes that we have made in Great Britain. Think about it this way. Suppose I told you that at a certain point in pregnancy, a child's life needs to be protected, at viability, for example, as most people would agree. But suppose I made an exception for a certain kind of human being. Suppose I said that there are some human beings with a certain genetic profile, which means that they will never get as far as in their careers as other humans. They may be ridiculed and go through hardship or even abuse as a result of their condition. And that if a parent felt that they simply could not look after someone with this condition, they should be allowed to end that child's life even until the point of birth or during it. You might think this is fair enough, because that's exactly what the law in Great Britain and now in Northern Ireland allows. But alternatively, you might have noticed that this was actually a defense of sex-selective abortion, whereby baby girls with 2 X chromosomes are singled out for abortion because they don't meet society's broken idea of the perfect person. Perhaps the parallels are not exact, but they are telling. What does it tell us when we are absolutely appalled at the idea of making an exception to end the life of a viable baby in the womb because it's a girl? But if that girl is disabled, then there's no problem with it. We object to sex-selective abortion regardless of our opinion about abortion generally, because sex-selective abortion sends an emphatic, unequivocal message that girls are not equal. But if sex-selective abortion says that girls are not equal, what does disability-selective abortion say about human beings with disabilities? The answer could not be clearer. These laws are discriminatory. Worse than that, they are eugenic. Historically, this is not controversial. When abortion was introduced specifically for disabled babies in the early 20th century, whether in progressive countries like Sweden or Denmark, or fascist countries like Germany or Japan, it was always explicitly called eugenic abortion by its advocates. Indeed, Japan's law legalizing abortion on these grounds was called the Eugenic Protection Law up until 1996, within the lifetimes of most of us. But it doesn't matter how you dress it up with language, the substance of the law remains the same. Human beings with disabilities protested the early eugenic abortion laws. They protested the same eugenic provision in Great Britain's 1967 Abortion Act. And they are still protesting today. There has never been any question about what they are saying. The only question is, when will we finally listen? This law is based on outdated prejudice, but it's also based on outdated medicine. We know now that women who give birth to children with disabilities have better mental health outcomes than women who end their pregnancies in the same situation. The science is unequivocal on this. A recent study in the top journal Midwifery found that a characteristic experience of women who had abortions for disability was the experience of, I quote, undescribable torture. If you contrast this with studies of women who carry their pregnancies to term, they almost invariably describe their experiences with their children as the most powerful and positive and meaningful experiences of their lives. Medicine has come a very long way since 1967, and even further since the explicitly eugenic laws of the 30s and 40s. We now know a great deal more about development in the womb. We know now beyond a shadow of a doubt that disabled children in the third trimester of pregnancy are capable of feeling pain. We know far more about how to care for and support children and adults with disabilities, including medical treatment and symptomatic for relief for medical issues which may or may not arise. But my firm conviction as a doctor is that what children with disabilities need more than any of this is the same thing that any other child needs: love. And that is exactly what this law denies them. I am a lucky human being. That's not just because I've spent so much time in Northern Ireland and been to so many weddings on the North Coast. It's also because my disability was not detectable in the womb. If it were, then statistically I would not be alive today. But however much I might have achieved, however treasured I am by some people, and however much I love my life and the people in it, the overwhelming likelihood is that in Great Britain, I would have been seen as a fetal anomaly and discarded before I had the chance to speak for myself. There is a story told about an early Christian saint in Rome, St. Lawrence, who was under fierce persecution from the Roman state. He was commanded to round up all the church's treasures and hand them over to the Roman state. And so when the time came, the treasures of the church were demanded of him. And so Lawrence rounded up all the poor and hungry of the city, and he presented them to the authorities. These are the treasures of the church, he said. Can Northern Ireland say the same thing about her children living with disabilities or differences? I have no doubt that the people of Northern Ireland would say exactly the same thing. But the law imposed by Westminster says the exact opposite of this. And now it's time to put that right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Callum, for that. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing with us. Mr. Paul Givan has had Wi-Fi issues, is now outside, and he's now on 4G. So we're going to go straight to him and let him just talk. And apologies that we couldn't hear you earlier on, Paul. So you take it away, and we'll hear a bit from you. And if you've got any questions for Paul, please put them in the comments, and we'll ask them to him at the end. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you. Apologies. Okay, thank you. Apologies for this. The technology here at Stormont is antiquated as the legislation that we're talking today. Hopefully you're able to pick me up now a little bit better. Obviously the bill has now been introduced, and this is the culmination of a lot of work, and I'm delighted to be partnering with Don't Screen Us Out. And this is fundamentally a human rights issue. It is about equality, and when we look at the Section 75 law here in Northern Ireland, we're under a duty to promote equality of opportunity for people with disabilities, and yet that opportunity is denied whenever it comes to the pre-birth stage, and that needs to be changed. And so this legislation is very much important to championing disability rights, and it goes to the core of what we as a society want in a progressive world where we treat everybody equally, but in this case not if you've got Down syndrome or things like cleft lip or club foot. And obviously it's the start of a process. This campaign will go on now for a period of weeks and months, and I look forward to engaging with that. So listen, I'm happy just to take any questions from individuals. I appreciate the quality of this camera feed isn't great, so I can pick up with any journalists separate to this on a better line. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paul. So I just have a couple of questions as we wait for some more to come through. Please do feel free to ask questions, and if not, if you would like to send them to me afterwards, I'll try and get Paul to answer them. Paul, there's been a couple we've had in the last sort of 24 hours. Some people may say that this is a hypocritical attempt to change the law. Do you care about people with disabilities, and why are you not considering access to abortion for those who are disabled?
Well, the straight answer to that is yes, I do. I have a track record of having championed the cause of disability sports, for example. Whenever I was the sports minister, I increased funding for disability sports here in Northern Ireland, and of course, in my own constituency, I've supported new facilities and access to public services for people with disabilities. So this bill is important to me at a personal level. It's important. I hear my dad talking a lot about my uncle that had Down syndrome, and he lived a good life for 57 years, with joy and enriched the family. And so, yes, I am related with some of that story as well. But what we need to be providing to people is the best possible support, medical pathways and care, so that people don't regard Down syndrome as a problem, that extra chromosome makes somebody unique, and that's to be protected as opposed to a diagnosis that should provide concern. And what we need is a supportive medical pathway to people, so that abortion isn't the solution.
Okay, Paul, we're just getting a bit of feedback on your end, so if you wouldn't mind, if you can move away from where the wind is, see if that makes any difference. I just have another question, if Paul's still there. Paul has gone. So if you have any other questions for Paul, please do email me at laura@jerseyroadpr.com. That's laura@jerseyroadpr.com. Really sorry about that, but hey, this is what it's like when you're trying to do everything in Zoom. If you've any questions for any of our other spokespeople today, you can do that through my email address as well. Both Laura and also Heidi and also Dr. Callum Miller will be able to answer those questions. So I just want to thank you all today for your time with us, and thank you to our participants. And I hope that you got a sense of what we're trying to do today. And yes, thank you again for joining us. Thanks.